This video is about technology that's exploited to stalk and harass individuals, and the information and strategies presented in this video could be helpful across a couple different areas for your own personal technology usage and safety, or if you're safety planning or doing advocacy work with clients or students on campus or individuals in the community. The video has two components. The first component is an overview of the most commonly exploited technologies used to stalk and harass individuals. It's kind of like a show and tell about what individuals use and have access to regarding technology to access your information. The second component of the video is a safety and prevention component. How do you keep your technology and information safe, and how do you help others prevent this from happening to them? So when we're talking about technology and stalking, we're not talking about anything different regarding the definition of stalking. For the purpose of this video, stalking is still a series of unwanted behaviors where the recipient feels unsafe. But when we introduce technology, what we're doing is we're talking about the ways that those technologies are exploited by the stalker or harasser to impersonate, bully, intimidate, harass, impersonate, or monitor an individual. The behaviors aren't new and the motivations certainly aren't new, but the ways that they gain access to your information, the ways that they exploit technology to monitor you without your knowledge have been made easier, more time efficient, cheaper through the technologies that they exploit. And so the behaviors we're talking about today aren't new, but the methods are constantly changing because technology changes at such a rapid rate. There are some important things to keep in mind regarding some of the statistics related to stalking as we talk about technology. Every year, millions of adults in the United States are stalked on college campuses and in the community. And the majority of those are by people they know. 70 to 80% of stalkers are former partners, roommates, acquaintances, coworkers, peers, or colleagues. And this is really important with technology because those are the people who know your routine. Those are the people who have access to your technology, your computers, your tablets, your cell phones. And it's important to keep in mind that few of the cases that involve technology and stalking are stranger cases, and so it's important to keep in mind some of the safety protocols when you're thinking about passwords or how you use your technology, that the majority of stalkers are individuals you know. And when we're talking about technology and stalking, it's a common occurrence. There's a lot of overlap between the two phenomenon. Of a review of over 5 million police reports for stalking, the analysis showed that over 1 in 4 involve the harasser or stalker using technology. And the incidence rate of that is probably a lot higher because the over 1 in 4 statistic is only in cases where the victim or the police knew that technology was being used. So that's probably a significant underrepresentation. The most important thing to keep in mind is that if you're experiencing stalking or harassment, there's a good chance that technology may be involved. And it's important to know how so that you can keep yourself safe. One of the first technologies we're going to review involve your cell phone. And this would be important if you're using a cell phone that can access the internet. It has a data plan, a data connection. You can get text messages. You can read your email. Anything that uses those 3G or 4G data connections, it's important to pay attention to because there's a lot of technologies, apps, software, programs that can exploit your cell phone, and most of them do it in stealth mode without your knowledge, without any notification. And so this next segment is going to review some of the ways that those programs can manipulate your cell phone information. The first piece around cell phone and technology and stalking that I want to talk about is cell phone spyware. And so right now, if your phone can access data and send and receive information, and if it doesn't have a password on it right now, it's virtually impossible for the end user, the owner of the cell phone, to tell if there's spyware on their cell phone. And this is really important because I want to say this a couple of times in the video, that prevention is really important when it comes to technology and stalking. If you have mobile devices and whatever technology you use, if you can have preventative methods like a password, whether it's a numeric password or a visual password on your devices, that can prevent a lot of doubt and worry about whether your devices are compromised or not. And this is really important with cell phone spyware, because if you don't have a password on your cell phone, it's impossible for you to figure out if there's spyware on your cell phone. It would require some third-party software or you talking with someone who knew about forensic technology to find that out. And the reason that cell phone spyware is so pernicious is that it gives the stalker almost unlimited access to all of your information. Think of all the things that you do on your cell phone. You carry it around with you, you take notes on it, you take pictures and videos, you read your email, you might do mobile banking. If someone has cell phone spyware on your device, they have unlimited access to all that information. And it takes about 15 seconds to install spyware on a cell phone. Just think about all the times that your cell phone is out of your view, whether you leave it in your bag, you leave it on your desk, you're in a meeting. If someone could pick up your phone and it doesn't have a password on it, they could scan a code or they could enter in a website and install cell phone spyware and link it to their account so that they could remotely gain access to your phone. So why is this such a big deal? Well, it's a big deal because you live and do a lot of tasks through your mobile device like your cell phone. If there were cell phone spyware on your cell phone right now, it would allow the stalker to remotely turn on your microphone of your phone and listen into your conversations at any time. Not only could they listen to your conversations on the phone in real time, but they could activate the microphone sensor and listen in at any time. When you're in a meeting, when you were meeting with a student or a client, when you were meeting with your attorney, and it would allow them to record and listen in on any of your conversations. There's a lot of technology in your cell phone that would allow a stalker to have a lot of information about you. And one would be the GPS module. A stalker could activate your GPS module remotely and track your location at any time in real time, and the cell phone spyware allows the user to plot your route for the day on a map, and it'll email it to them at the end of every day, where you've been, how long you've been there, what your route was to work or from home, where you stopped along the way. And that could give them a lot of information about how to track and follow you and know where you are throughout the day. Those are just two of the many things that cell phone spyware could do. Other things it could do, they have complete access to every piece of information on your phone. They can look at all the photos you've taken, all the videos you've taken, all the emails you've sent or received, all the text messages you've sent or received, and what you said. And it can also give them access to the hardware functions of your phone as well. They can remotely activate the camera or video camera of your cell phone and start taking pictures and recording video. And just remember, all of this is happening without your knowledge. This spyware is running in the background. It doesn't show up on any task managers. It doesn't show up with any notifications or alerts. And it's allowing them to remotely control your cell phone. One of the newer functions of cell phone spyware is that it allows them to control your phone in real time and mimic anything that you can do on your phone as well. And so they could actually set your cell phone up to block and not receive numbers from a certain phone number. Imagine if you were in a legal dispute with somebody and they could actually block your number from accepting phone calls from the court or from your attorney or from a judge, and you would never be able to receive those phone calls or even have a record that they existed. Another one is through the live control panels. A individual who is manipulating your phone could make phone calls from your phone. They could call somebody on your behalf, and it will be traced back to your phone. So when it comes to cell phones and spyware, just remember that anything you could do on your phone, any information you have, any actions you have, they can do. They could turn off your phone. They could completely wipe your phone. They could hijack your email account. They could send text messages from your account to other people, and it would all be traced back to you. And most of it would happen, if not all of it, without your knowledge. And so it's really important to think about who has access to your cell phone, what preventative measures you have in place, and who has been using it recently if things are happening that are out of the ordinary. There's another way technology is exploited related to cell phones and phone calls, and it's through number manipulation. The caller ID services that we have on our landline phones, or the information that displays on your cell phone when you're getting a phone call about the identity of the caller, can be manipulated. And this is another way stalkers and harassers can intimidate and impersonate individuals through technology. So imagine a situation where someone was getting harassing phone calls. One of the first things that they might do is stop answering those calls. They could screen their calls, and they could refuse to answer phone calls from somebody where they knew the number was someone they didn't want to talk to. However, through something like a spoof card, the harasser can manipulate the number that is displayed on your caller ID. And so what they do is they can get an app, or they can buy a physical card, kind of like a calling card, and they enter in their number, the number they want to call, and the number that they want to display on the caller ID. And so if there's someone who's familiar with your routine at all, they could have it display your work number, or your parents' number, or your children's number, or a friend's number. And when you think that you're answering a phone call of someone you know and you want to talk to, you're actually answering a phone call for the person who's stalking and harassing you. And this can be really frightening because it's another example of how stalkers create a sense of you being unsafe and things being out of your control, and them always being able to have access to you. So if you start screening their calls, they can bump it up and mask where they're calling you from, even the number they're calling you from. And so not only could it result in you answering phone calls for people you didn't want to talk to, but it also masks the number that they're calling you from. So if you physically block their number through your cell phone carrier, they could call from another phone and mask what that number is, and it will be a lot harder for you to block their number. So this next section is going to talk about how text messages and email accounts can be exploited or manipulated in stalking and harassment cases. And the first one we'll talk about is text messages. And text messages can be exploited in a couple different ways. The first one are anonymizers. Basically, it's a program or an app on the phone that allows a harasser to send an anonymous text message. They could have it display an incorrect origin, or it could just completely anonymize where it's coming from. This is usually after a victim or recipient has blocked their number, or screens their calls or texts, or stops responding to them. They could up the contact by making it anonymous through one of these programs like Fake My Text, or there's dozens of different websites and programs that'll do this. Another strategy that's a little more intense is some of the programs that allow you to create a life of a text message. This is really important for victims and recipients of stalking who are trying to log evidence. They're keeping a stalking or harassment log, and they're reporting to law enforcement. It's really hard with this technology because unless you're aware that it exists, it would be impossible for you to retain any of these text messages as evidence. So an example of this would be Tiger Text. And what Tiger Text does, it allows the sender of the text to set a life of a text. So, for example, I could send you a text and set it to self-destruct after you open it within 60 seconds, or delete itself after you've opened it a day later. And so unless you had a camera on you to take a screenshot of your phone receiving this text message within 60 seconds, it would be really hard for you to prove that you received this threatening or harassing text message from this individual. Not only does it delete itself from your phone, but Tiger Text has in place so that they wipe their servers every day. So even if you were able to get a subpoena for cell phone records or for Tiger Text, the data wouldn't be there. The information about who sent the text to you wouldn't be available. And so one of the ways that you can protect yourself against this is by being aware that the technology exists so that you can take appropriate measures for keeping track of it or taking pictures that it exists. But again, it's another way that stalkers have access to you and can manipulate the contact that they have with you by setting a life of a text message, which sets you up to not be able to retain records of the contact. So email accounts can also be exploited through technology. Aside from simply hacking into your email account and taking it over or monitoring it, there are some ways that individuals can make their identities through emails anonymous or send you emails even if you've blocked them. Some of these would be programs like BurnNote or programs that allow multiple anonymous email accounts to be created. So, for example, imagine you're getting threatening, harassing emails from somebody. Sometimes one of the most common responses from a recipient is to simply block that sender, have it sent directly to their junk mail or their spam, or block them from receiving emails from them anyway. Well, if they used one of these online programs, not only could they instantly create numerous anonymous email accounts, they can also set it to send you messages at prescribed intervals throughout the day. And so if you block one email account, it can just create a new one and send you a message every 5 minutes, every hour, from multiple accounts. So no matter how many times you block the account, you would still be receiving these messages, even though you made it clear that it was unwelcome. Another newer technology are programs that disable functions on your keyboard from saving evidence. And there are some programs that disable the print screen function while you're reading the message, or they disable the screen capture function. And what it does is, if you're not aware that the technology exists, it's really hard for you to maintain that evidence and prove that they sent it to you. So you imagine a stalker has an anonymous email account and they're sending their victim emails that don't allow them to print or take a screen capture. And for people who aren't technologically savvy, it might be really confusing and really frustrating when you go back later and the email's not there, or you can't print it off like the law enforcement official told you to. And so it's really important that people who work with individuals who are experiencing this are aware of some of these technologies so that they can help them safety plan more effectively. Another way that individuals can use technology to access your information without your knowledge is through metadata that's stored in picture files. Where this is most commonly exploited is in pictures that are taken on a camera with a GPS unit in it. And so most commonly it's cell phone pictures and cell phone videos. When you take a JPEG on a camera that has GPS, if your location services are turned on, it may be storing your location and other information that you may not be aware of is transmitted when you upload that photo online. So think of all the places that you upload photos through Facebook and Twitter and Flickr and Picasa and all the other photo sharing sites. If you took it on a camera that has GPS enabled, it may have saved the location of where you took the picture, the date, the time, and other settings relevant to the camera that may be included that you weren't aware of. It's important to pay attention to how your information is displayed online publicly, because there are apps and software and programs that can compile this information in ways that you may not have intended it to be used. And one of the reasons that metadata in pictures is so important is that your location is one piece of information that people can use to find out more about you. And the following is an example of following the metadata in a picture on Twitter and seeing how much information we can find out about an individual that's publicly available on the internet. So we used a popular program to find a tweet on Twitter where an individual had uploaded a picture from their camera phone. And as it turns out, there was metadata in that picture that allowed us to map this person's location through the longitude and latitude. The tweet on Twitter was a picture of a child playing in a backyard with the tweet, "We really need some more land." And if you can't see it there. It says uploaded via Twitter for BlackBerry. And so this person took their picture in their backyard, uploaded it to their Twitter account, and since it included some location information, we were able to click on map location and see where this individual was when they took this picture. So now we know the city and state of where this person lives, and because the Street View application on the map, we are also available to view what their house looks like. And you can see when we zoom in, you can also see the make and model and license plate number of their vehicles. If you do a couple more searches on search engines, you can see that this individual, through their Twitter account, has a public Foursquare account. So now we have more information that is public. Anybody can look at it. Now we know where they work out. We know where they go out to eat. We know when they go to the grocery store. We have the locations of those places and when they went. And so if you were building a profile of somebody, you now have an idea of what their neighborhood looks like, what they drive, what they look like, what their routine is, where they go. And when I scanned the QR code in the public Foursquare account, it provided me with this individual's full name. And with that information, in a quick search engine search, we were able to pull in their LinkedIn profile and see their resume, see where they currently work, see what their job description is, see all the people they network with professionally. A quick Google search of somebody where you know their name and their city turned up a public Picasa account, so now you have photo albums of this individual's family and all the places they go on vacation and their friends, and they uploaded some pictures to their Picasa account that were school photos. And if you can see in the bottom, it says there's no latitude or longitude data, which is really great. However, the file was named their son's first and last name and where they went to school. And digging a little further, you find out that they have a public YouTube account where we have videos of all of their family vacations. And all of this was possible because this person uploaded a picture to Twitter from their cell phone that had their location in it. Without their location, we never would have found their Foursquare account, we never would have found their name, where they work, or anything else about them or their family. But all it takes is a little public information, public records, through Google searches, things you make available publicly through Facebook and Twitter, where people can really put together a comprehensive portfolio about your activities and your location and information about you. Not only would this be useful for monitoring somebody, but if someone were going to impersonate you or engage in identity theft, they'd have virtually all the information they would need to do that. The next commonly exploited technology regarding stalking is unsecured wireless networks. And this could be an unsecured wireless network in your home through your personal internet connection, or it could be when you use public internet Wi-Fi hotspots at coffee shops or in libraries. These are really important to pay attention to, because if the connection is unsecured, what this typically means is when you don't have to sign in, when you don't need a password, that means the information that you're sending over that data connection isn't encrypted. Anybody who's looking could find that information and take it. And that's what it means when it's an unsecured connection. There's no encryption, there's no protection. And it's really important because if you're in a public Wi-Fi hotspot space and you're logging into accounts, you're doing mobile banking, you're shopping online, you're filling out forms, all of that information that's sent out there can be taken. It's called sniffing, and people can pull those packets of data out of the air and transfer them onto the computer while you're doing it almost instantaneously. And at the end of the video, we'll talk about some safety precautions for using unsecured wireless network. But right now, it's just really important to understand that if you don't have to do anything that's sensitive on your computer on a public unsecured Wi-Fi hotspot, it's best to wait until you get to a more secure connection. But again, at the end of the video, if there are things that you need to do, there will be some precautions. The other thing I wanted to mention is Wi-Fi hotspots in your house through your own Wi-Fi router. These are really important to secure through a password and through encryption, because not only can people log in from next door or from outside, I mean, they can log in from hundreds of yards away to your Wi-Fi account if it's unprotected. They can see what you're doing online, so they can have access to your personal information, files on your computers, your login information, but they can actually hijack your connection and do things on it that are illegal, and then they get traced back to your IP address. And so there's a couple vulnerabilities when it comes to using Wi-Fi hotspots, and we'll cover those precautions at the end of the video. Now we're going to discuss how to keep your home internet connection secure. And one thing I want to mention as a precursor to the information we're going to discuss is, even if you don't 100% understand all the terminology that's going to be used or all the settings we're going to talk about, that a normal user can go into the settings and make these changes and make your technology more secure. Even if you don't understand completely how they work, it's important to understand what the safer options are. And when it comes to protecting your home internet connection, it's really important, as we discussed earlier, to have a secure internet connection, which people can only access if they've been given permission by you. And typically what that looks like is two main things. When it comes to your router, you want to make sure you pay attention to your administrative login as well as your user login. And we'll start with administrative login. Administrative login is only needed typically when you set up your router for the first time, or when you want to change any of the settings about how your router functions. Most people set these up out of the box and they never mess with them again. But it's important to get them set up correctly from the beginning so it's as secure as possible. The first thing you want to do is change the default administrative password. These are set by the manufacturers as a default, and every single router that's made by that carrier through that model number has the exact same login information. So anyone could go online and look up your router and find the default administrative password. And that's really important because you need that password to change security settings about who can access your internet connection. So sometimes you'll see the default password is admin or password or administrator. It's really important that you change it to something that's more secure. A little later we'll talk about how to make a more secure, comprehensive password. But for right now, just understand that changing that password can do a lot to prevent people from accessing your internet connection. The second type of password you want to pay attention to is the login information. This is what somebody would need to come into your home and log on as a user or a guest of your internet connection. And so this one, it's really important that you create something that is really secure, that can't be guessed or can't be hacked really easily. And we'll talk a little bit again later about what a secure password looks like. But even if you create a long, complicated password, your computer that you log in with only needs that information probably once. It saves it in its settings. So if you want to write down this password, some people tape it to the bottom of their router in case they're worried that they're going to forget it, because you actually need physical access to the router to see the password. And so it really wouldn't be a security risk if you wrote your router password and login information down in case you forget it later. The other thing to think about is the security settings you use on your router. You're going to be given a bunch of options: WEP, WPA, WPA2. It doesn't really matter if you understand how they work, but you're going to want to pick WPA2 with an AES encryption. This just gives you the most protection from people trying to access your files, and even if they are successful in accessing the files, they're encrypted, so they wouldn't be able to open them or make any sense of them. And it's really important for you to have a strong login password as well as appropriate security settings. There's one other vulnerability that is pretty rare, but it's important. A new technology is called WPS. It's a really easy way for you to try to log onto your router and click to have it directly connect you to the internet without entering that really complex password you just created. The problem is those are shipped with an 8-digit passcode that's the same for all models. And so those are really easily guessed by anyone that tries to sign on to your internet connection using WPS. If you disable that, you won't have to worry about it. And those are just a couple tips for how to secure your home internet connection. The next safety precautions we're going to discuss are about how to use public Wi-Fi hotspots in a more secure way. There's no perfect and completely secure way, but if you must sign on to the free internet services, the the library or at the coffee shops or the fast food restaurants. You can do it in a safer way that protects your information. As we said before, they're not secure. If you don't enter in a password, the information you send, the login information, your credit card information, your social security number, none of that is safe from people pulling it right out of the air. There's a lot of really convenient programs that can take that information right out of the public Wi-Fi hotspot. In fact, people who are going to follow you or who are going to stalk or harass you would probably monitor your location, and when you get on a public Wi-Fi hotspot, that'd be a perfect opportunity for them to take some of your information and be able to access your accounts. And so there are a couple suggestions if you're going to log in to accounts, if you're going to enter in sensitive information on a public Wi-Fi hotspot, that you can do it in a safer way. One of the first things is pay attention to the types of browsers and websites you're going to on the internet. The standard for a while was HTTP. If you want to use an encrypted website to protect your information, you'd want to use websites that have an HTTPS designation before the address. And in fact, there are a lot of add-ons and extensions to some of the most popular browsers that you can set things like Facebook and Gmail and all your other accounts to only log in when there's an HTTPS site available. And that would mean that the information that you're sending from your computer to the website would be encrypted because of that security definition. They're not perfect, and they do differ in terms of quality, but an HTTPS website is safer than an open, unsecured HTTP website. So that will be one of the first steps I would suggest. The second will be something that's called a virtual private network. And for our purposes, all you'd need to know is a virtual private network is a piece of software that runs, and instead of connecting you directly to the internet, you send your information to the virtual private network. It encrypts it and protects it, and then it sends it on to the website on the internet. And that's really important because now if anyone intercepts your data, they won't be able to access it, they won't be able to open it or read it. And you can get virtual private networks or VPNs. Some of them are built in to the most recent version of Windows and Mac operating systems, but there are some third-party alternatives that offer additional features for someone who wants to have more control over their data and how it's sent. If you want to look at some of the third-party ones, OpenVPN Shield Exchange, Shrusoft, and Cisco all offer free third-party options if you want to download them. Again, there are free options built into your Windows or Mac computer if you are running one of those operating systems. The third suggestion is if you're sending files, pictures, videos, Word documents, you should encrypt them. You can actually encrypt your entire hard drive, but if you just want to encrypt the files, it's a really good way to protect some of the most commonly used and stolen files, Excel documents, PowerPoints, Word documents. If you have case notes or client files, you shouldn't be sending those over a public unsecured Wi-Fi network anyway, but it's a good habit to protect your documents with encryption and with a password if you're using a portable device like a laptop or a tablet. Another option is a software firewall. All of your operating systems have a built-in basic firewall. This just adds another level of protection about who can access your device. And most of them are turned on automatically, but don't assume that. You'd want to go into your firewall, under your security settings, and make sure that the basic protections are in place. Firewalls won't protect against malware or spyware, but they will protect against unauthorized access being made to your computer. And the last suggestion I have, if you're going to use these public unsecured Wi-Fi hotspots, is disabling some of the access features for your device. These aren't turned off automatically, so it's really important that if your portable device logs onto a Wi-Fi hotspot, you've disabled your file sharing, your print sharing, and your folder sharing options. That's really important. At home, it's really convenient. You can share music between folders and movies between folders. You can print from different computers to the same printer. But if you're on a public Wi-Fi unsecured hotspot, that gives anyone on that network permission to snoop through your hard drive and take whatever they find because you've given the operating system permission to share it with anyone on that network. Again, at home, it's okay because you know people on your network. In public, it's not. Sometimes Windows and Mac will turn off those sharing functions if you log in as a public network. But if not, you'll want to go into your system preferences or your advanced sharing preferences and turn on all the folder sharing options. And those are really the best ways to protect yourself if you're going to go on a public Wi-Fi hotspot. This section about safety and prevention is about passwords. And we all know that passwords are important, and you need a strong password, and you need to put passwords on your devices. I just want to re-emphasize the importance of the preventative aspect of having a password. If someone were going to install some of the spyware we talked about earlier to your laptop or your cell phone, they could be prevented from doing that if you had a password in place. And on a lot of these devices, they're a numeric password, they're a word password, it could be a visual password. Any of those are better than nothing. If someone can't have access to your device, then they can't install the software on it that could monitor you and harass you. So think about all the devices you use and how you access the internet and places that you store your information. You're going to want to make sure you have a numeric or a visual password on those cell phones and tablets, and some kind of catchphrase password on your laptops and desktops and any other device that has sensitive information. The other important thing about passwords are you want to create a secure password. And it's really important to remember that just because you think the password would be hard to guess doesn't mean it's not an easily hacked password. And hackers use something called brute force attack, and all that means is the program guesses all the combinations of letters and numbers and symbols that exist. And so the longer or more complex your password is, the longer it would take a program to hack in to your computer or to your account. So there aren't too many concrete rules, but I'll tell you the baseline you'd need to create a good password. Don't make your password anything that's in the dictionary. Don't use any words from the dictionary. Don't use any personal information. Don't use your middle name. Don't use your dog's name. Not only are these things easier to guess, but the hacking programs automatically go and use derivations of words from the dictionary and guess them almost instantly. So anything that's a simple password, 7 characters or less, is really vulnerable to hacking. That being said, length is really important. It doesn't matter how complex your password is. If you have a 7-character password, it can be hacked in seconds. So even if your password has capital letters, lowercase letters, symbols, punctuation, it can be hacked through the brute force hacking from a normal desktop in a matter of seconds. If you're going to create a password that has any defense to these hacking programs, you want to create a complex password that involves letters, numbers, and symbols that's 8 characters or longer. You want to shoot for somewhere between 8 and 14 characters. You want to make it something that you can remember, and near the end of this segment, I'm going to talk about how you create a password that's easily memorable that you can use across numerous different accounts. So length and complexity is really important creating passwords, but we all know how annoying it is to have multiple complex, hard to remember passwords for all of our different accounts. And so there's a couple ways to get around that, and there's a really handy trick we'll discuss a little later about how to create multiple strong passwords that are easy to remember. The first thing to remember is there's some good web resources for creating and testing how strong and secure your passwords are. HowSecureIsMyPassword.net is a really great website where you can enter in your password and it'll tell you how long it would take a normal desktop PC hacking program to guess your password. And anything over 8 characters is typically numerous years, as long as it's complex enough. And so that's a really good resource. Also, MakeMeAPassword.net is a sister site of the first one, and it will help create an easy-to-remember random password for you. The problem is with most users is you have multiple accounts. Trying to remember complex passwords with punctuation and capitalization can be tricky. But there's a really handy tip for how you can create really safe and secure passwords. The first suggestion is to take a common phrase that will be easy for you to remember. This will create the base of the password that you use across all your accounts. And so if you were going to use the phrase, "I hate creating multiple passwords," your base password would be capital I, H, C, MP, exclamation point. This could serve as the base that's pretty strong, but it's not good enough for all your passwords. And then some of the experts suggest you end that password with a designation for the account that you're signing into. So you could take that base password, and if you were signing into Facebook with it, you could end it with face with a period at the end. That would make a really strong password that would actually take hundreds of years for a hacking program to guess. And so you could use that same base and sign on to your Amazon account by entering in capital I, lowercase HCMP, exclamation point, Amazon, period. You could do it however you want it, but as long as you create a secure base that is hard to guess, you can add identifiers at the end of that password and use it across multiple accounts. And most of those passwords could survive any brute force hacking program out there. One of the most common questions I get when I'm presenting this information is, how do I know if my devices have been compromised? How do I know if there's spyware on my cell phone or on my computer? And so just really briefly, we're going to review some of the warning signs if your technology has been compromised. Again, these programs run in stealth mode, and so it's really hard to identify whether or not, for a normal user, if they're on your device. But there are some warning signs that could alert you to take it in to an advocate or your carrier or an IT person in your company or on your campus to have them do a more thorough scan. And so we'll discuss some of those, as well as some just general suggestions if you're experiencing technology and stalking, and then we'll end the video with some suggestions about some good online resources. The important thing to remember when we're talking about harassment or stalking that involves technology is to trust your instincts. A lot of times people will know too much. They'll know where you've been, they'll know conversations you've had, they'll know activities you've done online, things that they shouldn't have known because you thought were private. This may be a sign that something about your technology or your accounts has been compromised. So pay attention to that and start paying attention to your devices and your accounts and seeing if you can, through your own work or through the work with an advocate or a friend, identify areas where your technology could have been compromised. And here are some of the warning signs. For cell phones, some of the warning signs that it may have been compromised is that it engages in a lot of erratic or unexpected behavior. Sometimes you'll find your phone is warm even though you haven't been using it. It might turn itself on or off. It might restart. In the middle of a conversation, you might hear clicks or beeps that didn't happen before, or calls that have been dropped. You might also notice unexplained activity on your account, calls that it shows you received you don't remember receiving, text messages that were sent from your phone, a spike in data usage if someone's monitoring your location. You also might see some signs on your phone itself through some of the sensors. Sometimes GPS unit signal will come on if the GPS unit's been activated. Sometimes your battery drains faster than it normally would. And a short-term option is to turn the phone off or remove the battery. This would prevent any of the spyware options from being utilized in the short term, but long-term solutions would be to contact a resource or an advocate in the community and get support there, talk to local law enforcement. Some people initially suggest that you should immediately stop that phone account or suspend that account and get a new number. That is not the most commonly suggested attempt here. Sometimes people will say, leave that account open if you can, and then get a secondary line if possible, get a pay-as-you-go phone. A lot of times stalkers and harassers who contact you through your phone, they'll leave evidence there, they'll leave voicemails, they'll leave text messages, and also that phone houses the spyware, which can also be proof if you ever do go to law enforcement to get a do not contact order. So it's really important, if you are noticing these uncommon behaviors through your cell phone, to take it to a carrier, take it to someone who can support you in investigating whether or not that your device has been compromised. Some of the tips for cell phones also apply to computers. Computers, if they're infected with spyware or malware that's monitoring you, or accessing your information without your permission will have some of the similar erratic behaviors, and it's important to take those to somebody who knows more about that than you do, an IT professional, someone who knows about forensic technology, to do some scans and gather and maintain that evidence. Even if you don't ever want to pursue legal options, that information would be helpful in case sometime in the future you would ever need it. It's important just generically to have antivirus and anti-malware programs installed and updated, have your firewall settings in place like we talked about earlier, and to see if anybody has had access to that technology recently. Has the stalker or harasser had access to your desktop? Did they buy you a new phone or replace your phone? It's important to pay attention who's had access to that technology, because like we said in the beginning, the people who are most likely to stalk and harass you are people that you know in your life. And so they're the ones that could have accessed your desktop, asked to borrow your cell phone, bought you a piece of technology as a present, but it really was used to spy on you. So it's important to go through those checklists to determine if any of those technology changes coincide with any of the experience of technology and harassment that you're experiencing. This section we're going to talk about some really helpful online resources. One of the first things we did when we were starting to talk about technology and safety on our campus is to collaborate with the information technology services to create an online website. A lot of times victims and recipients of stalking and harassment experience the behavior and need support outside of the 9 to 5 hours. And so here at the University of Iowa, we've created a technology and stalking kind of one-stop shop for anyone who works with students or staff or faculty who are experiencing this behavior. And you can go on the website, there'll be a resource slide at the end about where you can go to see this information, but there's a place to see how can you reset your email password, how do you replace a lost student ID card, how do you change your information in our student information service website, what happens if that gets hacked. And it's really important to have easily accessible information in print and online so that people can see what steps they need to take to protect themselves and to seek help. And one of the first things and one of the best responses we've had on campus is to create the online website and to train some of our IT support staff and help desk individuals when they receive calls that could be technology and stalking related, how they can refer those individuals to the appropriate resources. Another really great resource online is to the National Center for Victims of Crime. They have a really great online resource at stalkingawarenessmonth.org. There's some really great safety planning materials for advocates and individuals in law enforcement. They have a really great DVD about technology and stalking, and they also have an online training program you can sign up for to learn more about the topic. All in all, they're one of the best resources and most comprehensive resources online if you want information about safety planning, prevention, and how to support individuals who've experienced stalking and harassment. They offer some really great model policies for companies and campuses who want to include stalking and harassment and technology issues in their policies and procedures, as well as some really great how-to guides and some really engaging interactive material about the use of technology and stalking.